Randy. Episode 5, Fretful Dreams. Hey, everybody. I'm Jimmy Ether, and I'm here with
Randy King from King Electric Guitars. How are you guys doing today?
They can't answer.
I know. Sorry.
We're just going to assume you said great.
Forget.
And
Yes.
move forward.
Right.
Randy doesn't know how, radio works.
This isn't radio. This is electronic radio. There's a difference.
We're in the 30s, and this is radio. This is AM radio, baby.
Look here, Sonny. So anyway.
So today we're going to talk about our favorite Japanese era, like 60s era guitars, I think.
Yeah. Some of the crazy Taisco stuff and some of the K's and blah, blah. A lot of the stuff that some people may think, well, it was sold at Sears, so it's United States or U.S. made. It was all Taisco.
Yeah. So all the Sears guitars were Taisco?
I don't know if I could say they all were, but
Like
a lot of the
silver
stuff,
tones and stuff. Some of that stuff was.
A lot of that stuff was made in one factory overseas, over in Japan, and I think the Taisco factory it's the Shoji-jin, I think is the name of it. I can't remember, but there was Shoji-jin, Fuji-jin, and Matsumoku were the factories that were making some really weird, crazy stuff in the 60s.
Yeah.
And then in the 70s, they moved on to just making exact copies and usually better than the American-made stuff.
So I imagine it was the pawn shop that you worked at that you got introduced to them initially. Is that true?
Yeah, I saw some of the stuff beforehand. Actually, initially, to tell you the truth, now that I think about this, I learned how to play guitar on a Japanese copy of a Martin that my dad bought the day John F. Kennedy was shot. So early 60s.
So his soul went right into that guitar.
Yeah,
clearly.
right. And so that'd just tell you, 63, he bought this guitar, and it was a Japanese copy of a Martin called a Suzuki 3. And then I had another guitar at the time that was my dad's, and it was this guild-shaped body and headstock.
Mm-hmm.
The loudest acoustic guitar I'd ever heard in my life. And one of these days, I'm going to completely gut this thing and rebuild it. But it was called a Crown. And I recently found out that Crown was a pawn shop outside of Detroit, which is where he was.
Right.
And they had their own guitars made by an overseas Japanese company.
Which was super common.
Yeah, that happened all the time.
It was common for guitar pedals. It was common for guitars.
Right.
Like you get all these weird, it would all be the same manufacturer, but they just have a different brand on it.
Right. So,
Probably had to order like 100 or something.
Right. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was 100 guitars you could order, and you could have your own name. And it was like, I want this guitar. And it would just have your own name stuck on the headstock.
Yeah.
And that's why people have such a hard time. Like, what is this? And everybody goes, it's a Taisco.
Yeah.
Technically it is, but was it a Norma? Was it there's all these different brands.
So Horner and all that stuff, is that?
Honer
Honer
did some stuff around that time, more in the 70s.
Yeah.
So there's the 60s stuff that was just the wild, wacky Japanese shapes, and they were all just different, completely very space agey. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, Taisco was sold and became Kawai, and then they really started focusing on just knockoffs, man.
Like copies of Strats.
Right, just exact knockoffs. But the crazy early 60s stuff is the stuff to me that's just like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Like, it looks so cool.
Yeah.
Now, playing them, they're very hit or miss.
Yeah.
But as far as the looks, they're just really cool.
Yeah.
They had some really neat shapes, and the Taisco Del Rey, or the Taisco Del Rey, is the one that always got me. It's like, dude, that thing is crazy. And now Schecter's making that guitar as a Avenged Sevenfold guitar or something.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's hilarious. You look at the guitar at this Schecter, I forget who it is, but it's a guy from Avenged Sevenfold. And you look at it and you go, man, that guitar is really cool looking. And then you realize they completely just built a Taisco. Like, it's got the same crazy four on one side, 2 on the other side.
Yeah, I never understood that. A lot of them had that.
But let's look at who does that now. Ernie Ball.
Yeah.
I mean, So it's all about the string pull. It's great straight string pull. So
I guess it keeps the G in tune.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big problems is that, we like with the 3-3, we started getting a wound third.
Right.
Totally solves it. It
Yeah.
does not go out of tune with a wound third.
Right.
Hard to get a wound third unless you're playing heavy strings.
Right.
But you can get wound thirds in like, the slinky style strings or whatever.
Yeah.
And that totally solves it. So I wonder if that's the rationale behind it.
It's nice straight string pull. So they took, they were taking all kind of stuff, but they were also doing their own thing,
They always had goofy headstocks to me, but the bodies were cool.
Yes, they always had. But see, I love that Teisco Del Rey headstock. It's crazy long. It's just stupid for the sense of being stupid. It screams like, hey, I'm a surf rock guitar. The whole thing it's definitely got its thing,
So did they make the airline guitar as well?
I believe they made airline guitars. There's so many.
That design wise to me is the coolest looking of the era.
There was so many guitars that were sold in the United States that were imported over. And it's not like now where you're like, oh, well, I got a Fender. Well, is it a Japanese Fender? Is it a Mexican Fender? At the time it was like, I have a K.
Yeah.
Well, K was made K and Harmony and stuff was made in Chicago in the 30s.
Right.
But at some point they started
farming it
out. My first delve into the whole like Japanese instruments was the stuff that I learned how to play on. I never even realized it. And then also like I'm of a certain age where I still remember the Sears catalog. Yeah. And I remember looking through the Sears catalog being, dude, that guitar is super cool. Look at that thing. And it was all made, at the time by some company in Japan.
Yeah.
Now we're talking late 70s, early 80s, but it wasn't all the wacky stuff, but it was, like, look at this cool Eddie Van Halen ripoff, or look at this cool Frankenstrat ripoff, or, whatever. They were doing all that kind of stuff. So,
but the 60s ones, I mean, so how much do you think they pulled from? I mean, obviously they were pulling ideas from Fender, because there are definitely some jazz mastery kind of looking stuff, and California companies like Moss Wright and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely did that. They definitely pulled from other companies, and then just were like, I don't know, maybe sitting around drinking sake, going, how do we make this thing look different?
Right.
Or I'm not really quite sure, but they did some, like the Harmony Bobcat is a really cool shape. It's almost like a Jazzmaster top half with almost an SG bottom half. Like it's crazy.
Like rounded like that?
Semi-rounded, but not. You know what I mean? So, and it's offset, but not completely offset. Like they just did some really cool things, and I think they really just kind of like paid attention to lines. They were just like, and that's one of my big things is like, let's pay attention to what the lines look like and how do we change things and, that kind of stuff. And then they were also extremely like they would try, let's put 12 pickups in a guitar, or
the electronic stuff is crazy and some of that stuff.
Let's do all these crazy phase switches. And
there are always little switches. Yeah.
Back in the day, I used to be able to buy some of the stuff we're talking about for, you could buy them for $50 all day long. And now one of those gold foil pickups is a couple $100 a piece.
Yeah. And the gold foil has its own sound, it's weird, but I mean, like it'll do some weird stuff with electronics when you turn it down and things. They get strange.
And that pickup's about that tall.
Yeah.
And the reason why that pickup's that tall is because it's mounted, there is no route.
Yeah.
It's just stuck on top of that
of the guitar. So
it's literally two
cost-saving mechanism, not have to route it. Yeah.
So it was genius, and it ended up sounding, you have your gold foils, and then there's a silver foil, which is basically the same pickup.
Thing, just silver.
Just doesn't have gold. And but those pickups are, I mean, there's pickup manufacturers now who are recreating the gold foils.
Oh, yeah. Expensive ones.
Lawler and guys like that they're all doing it. And because it has its own thing.
Yeah.
So they're just
like, you play one of those through like a a fuzz face or something, and you just start like turning it down, and it does this like Velcro-y sort of like, ripping sound that you just don't get out of a regular single coil pickup or a humbucker or whatever.
Yeah.
This just weird behavior from, like, especially with the more primitive the effect or amp you're going into, the weirder those things get.
Well, and then you really start, another thing when you start thinking about it is like, so what did Hendrix play when he first started playing? It wasn't a Strat.
Yeah. It's true, probably.
It was probably a guitar built in one of these fleet we're talking about. You know?
Yeah.
I know at one time he had a Dan Electro. I know for a fact he had a Dan Electro.
Yeah. Where was Dan Electro made? They were U.S., but
I don't know that right now. I don't know that answer. They were made in a factory that made. I'm being facetious, but they were made in a factory that made siding because it's all masonite. Like they're if you ever get to pull apart a Dan Electro, they're a strange bird. But they do their thing too. Hey,
indestructible.
And that's the thing. I think that's what's so cool about a lot of these guitars and they look cool, but also like they were some of the first guitars of some of the greats, and they've probably been on some of these albums, and they've probably, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I mean, there's just a ton of people that, like, in the 90s, they were, like Smashing Pumpkins used them.
Oh, yeah.
And, Blonde Redhead, which is one of my favorite bands, Jesus and Mary Chain, stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of, like, weird, like, kind of more underground, alternative bands were using them just because they were pawn shop guitars. They were cheap,
Right.
That was the thing. But so, I mean, like, when you and I started talking about designing guitars, we started talking about, okay, well, we should do, like, there should be a Japanese kind of off thing. And I happened upon that Echo. Well, the Echo influenced Innermark. What was that? This a Cipher Valor 4.
Cipher, yeah. And there's actually two different. I just recently realized this is a Cipher Valor 6 as well.
There's a bunch of them, yeah. And they only made them for like 1 year,
right? And I tried to find out more about the Innermark company, and who knows?
Very little information.
It was
about
one of those
them.
Things that it was made in Shoji Gen factory, and it was made for some dude who decided.
Somebody just decided this is the design I want, and send it to the factory and have them made, like, probably a few hundred, and that was it.
Yeah.
First place I saw anybody playing an Innermark, only person I've ever seen play an Innermark, actually, that was that Cipher Valor 4, was Madison Cunningham, who usually plays a jazz master because she plays in she plays C standard.
Yeah.
And then, which is killer. She plays C standard with flat ones, I believe. And she usually uses the jazz masters because you can actually make that happen, and you get the intonation pretty close with them on that. But that Innermark is similarly built with a big long body and a like crazy long throw on the bridge and all that stuff. And so she was using it with a rubber bridge, and it just sounded freaking amazing and looked killer.
Right.
And I was like, man, what the hell is it? And I think it took us a couple of weeks to even figure out what it was.
Yeah, there was a little bit of back and forth on that.
But we finally found it, and that was kind of the initial inspiration, at least, for the Space Dolphin that you're building now.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
We changed it a lot, but
I was looking at that yesterday, and I was actually sanding on your guitar.
Yeah.
And then I looked up some stuff about Innermark, and I was like, golly. And then I found that Innermark 6. You showed me the Innermark 4.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the Innermark 6, and I'm like, did we just create? And then I looked at it again. I'm like, no.
We did a lot
more.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the whole thing is like it's
an inspiration point. Yeah.
It's definitely an inspiration point, and we've done a bunch of changes to it. But so back to my custom car, my car influences thing, the really nice stuff, the really nice custom cars, which is when I was a kid, custom cars was the way. I wanted it this tall and slammed to the ground. Like you can't see me, but I went this tall, so very low. Okay, well, some of you can see me, but you on the radio can't. So very low, drop down, like that was my thing, right? But the thing is you always, the really good, famous, amazing custom cars were the ones that you looked at and you knew something was different, but you didn't quite know what. And that's kind of where I was at with this. I'm like, did I? No, because I did this and I did this.
Well, like that's the thing with almost anything, though, like songs even.
Yeah.
Like, like a song that catches you right now, there'll be something familiar about it that you can't place, but it just feels that's what a classic is. It just feels classic. You can't explain it. You know, you might be able to pull a few, like it sounds a little bit like the Beach Boys and the Beatles or whatever, whatnot, you know,
and
Led Zeppelin, whatever, but it's not though, and it's doing something different, and that's kind of, you know,
and your influences are going to come out. Now, it's really funny to me because, you know, for years, my influences was the Gibson Les Paul. Yeah. It's the only guitar I ever gave a damn about, to tell you the truth.
That's funny.
I wanted my...
It's the guitar I cared the least about.
I always wanted one. When I bought the first one, I was like, oh my God, I've made it. I was financially irresponsible as hell and put myself in a horrible situation just to buy this guitar.
Yeah.
I played it for years and years. I still love Les Pauls. I think they have their place, but within the last 10 years or more, I've really started picking up on, you know, you would have never caught me dead playing a Telecaster or and I had a Strat 20 something years ago.
You're still a little negative on Strats. I'm trying to pull you back around. I'm not a huge Strat guy. Yeah. I liked them because, like I've told you before, they were like the Swiss Army guitar.
It's a great platform.
It's a great platform, which is kind of what we're doing with the Space Dolphin. Actually, is having that that Jazzmaster kind of Strat sort of interface with the Pickguard where everything's mounted in it.
But that came. The whole everything is mounted in it came directly from the Japanese guitars.
Totally.
Because I pulled apart enough of those guitars to realize, oh my God, I just took this pickguard off and I'm done.
I suspect the Jazzmaster was slightly influenced by the Japanese guitars on that, because it's the first Fender that really has full everything in the pickguard. Like the Strats don't. The plug still goes in the body. Everything in the Jazzmaster is mounted in the pickguard. Oh no,
I am
right. No,
right.
you're right.
The pickups are mounted in the body.
So even Fender never fully has a pickguard mounted.
The only thing that comes close is the Stratocaster. So
yeah, but you still have that ground,
right? Like but you still have the
output.
So what did Japanese companies were like? Okay, well we can do this because this makes sense. Efficiency, which is
I wonder did the Echo do that? Now I gotta look.
The Echo the
Echoes were like hardly any pickguard.
Yeah.
At least this one I'm looking at now. So like that wasn't like an Italian innovation either. That must have been a purely Japanese innovation. Somebody will correct us, but
I'm sure there'll be somebody that correct it. But yeah, the whole thing is efficiency is a very big a way of life in Japanese culture. And why do I need this? You know, the more I look at it is like, why do I need this input mounted to the side when this thing already has a pickguard? It already has, you know, and I'm sure.
Definitely in the Ibanez ones, you would see often like, it wouldn't be all one pickguard, but it would be like.
You'd have a separate one.
You'd have like 3 little pieces that you can unscrew separately. Modular kind of pickguard.
And everything is right there and you don't have to.
But it's still a carved out body. The body everything can be removed from the body.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at a Jazzmaster pickup, the way it's made, Jazzmaster pickup's a lot like the P90s. Yeah. So, you know, my Space Dolphin that I'm building, the first 2 that we're building, one's for me, one's for Ryan. Yours has got Strat pickups up, mounted like a regular. Mm-hmm. So mine's got P90s, 3 P90s, right?
Which is going to be fun.
Because why not put 3 P90s?
I've decided from here on out 3 pickup guitars all the way.
Yeah. See, I'm still I still love a 1 pickup guitar.
1 pickup guitars are awesome.
Right.
For just expedience and stuff, I get it. But as far as like when we started getting into that freeway switch,
right?
Like all bets were off at that point. Yeah. I was like, okay, there's no point in doing anything less than 3 pickups because those things will just do anything.
This one's going to be interesting for me because I've never played a 3 pickup, like 3 humbucker guitar. I've played them, but I've never owned them. So I'm not used to that.
So you're doing 3 P90s though?
3 P90s.
Okay.
And I'm mounting them to the pickguard. So which is I'm not the first person to do this, I'm sure, but I literally just made a little bracket, drop screws to the pickguard. So when you pick the whole thing up, the only thing you're going to have to do is take one little screw out that's going to be grounded to the body.
Like a record player.
And that's it. Yeah. And now
Which that, I can't believe I haven't seen anybody do that with a guitar. Like when you buy a record player, you know, and you have to like wire it to the ground wire down and all to the preamp and all that. Why that hasn't been done with guitars?
They are. There's a lot
I haven't seen anyone.
There's a lot of stuff now that's like click. I mean, dude, EMGs. Seymour Duncan right now has got like where you don't have to do any kind of wiring whatsoever.
But that's the whole pickup, though.
Right.
I'm talking about like, you know.
You talking about as far as like a grounding?
Just a ground wire.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and then you just unscrew that and you take the whole thing off. I haven't seen anybody do that. I mean, I've seen, obviously people are doing all kinds of crazy stuff where you can swap the pickups completely out and just plug them in with magnets and stuff, but that's a little silly to me.
Well, you know, I've got, that whole, some of that stuff is really cool.
It's really cool.
I get it.
Demonstration guitars makes a lot of sense.
But I'm never going to be like, oh man, in the middle of this solo, I'm going to take this pickup and put it here.
Yeah, I think do you remember that, what was that guitar that had like,
and it rotated.
And it had like 10 pickups.
They're all Seymour Duncans.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
But the cool thing, I think, and again, this is not a commercial for me, but I did that. So, hey, if you want to, here's your platform. Again, it was about building a platform.
Right.
Here's your platform. So if you wanted 3 P90s, I could make you the same exact pickguard with 3 P90s in it. And in 5 minutes, you could have 3 P90s.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing... ultimately, we're going to do 3 Firebird pickups in my next one after that. Right. So I mean, that's the same idea.
But yeah, all that, again, that came straight from me taking apart a Harmony Bobcat. When I worked at the music store, there was a guy who used to buy a ton of this stuff, and he had a bunch of it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a whole lot of hands-on experience with the stuff. I knew it was cool looking. I knew that. But, you know, we used to take apart 4 or 5 guitars and build more guitars because this one's gold foil was dead. So he'd send the gold foil out. I'd take one from this one, do all that kind of stuff. And literally the first day where I'm like, okay, we got to take apart this Bobcat, and I'm taking the pick guard off. And I'm like, well, how much wiring and stuff do I have to do? And I went, oh, I'm done. Like I took out, I think 6 screws and it was apart at that point. Took 4 screws out of the neck and the whole guitar was apart.
Yeah.
So I mean, they just had some really genius, like very streamlined yet very kooky, wild, weird shapes. Some of it's ugly as can be, and some of it is just like, man, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Or 90% of this is really, let's get rid of that or whatever. That was
kind of like I always felt about the Moss Wright stuff too. I'm like, you know, that's really like you'd see them in person, and like they had them at Midtown Music, which was this really, really epic music store in Atlanta back in the day, like in the 90s, that unfortunately no longer exist. Couldn't exist in this kind of landscape, probably way, not at the prices that we like. I got all my gear from them because it was just reasonable and they had everything. But yeah, they had 4 or 5 Moss Wrights always hanging, and nobody ever touched them. You know, because they were just looked at as like surf guitars.
They're the weirdest thing. Their necks are so narrow.
Narrow necks, weird guitars, but like really like the body, you look at it and you go, man, if that was flipped the other way, that would be awesome. So like it was always just a little strange.
Yeah. Do you remember this was in the mid 90s, early 2000s, Dan Electro started remaking some guitars.
Yeah, I've got that long.
Do you remember the Hodad they made?
Hodad.
It's called the Hodad. So it was basically a Moss Wright body turned upside down.
Yeah.
And some cool pickups and stuff, like lipstick pickups, a double stacked lipstick pickup, that kind of stuff. So sparkle finishes, and they were like $100.
My thing with the lipstick pickups is, man, the output is so low on those things. Yeah. They're almost unusable. They're so noisy.
Right.
And I didn't understand that was like kind of out of the design. Like you can't, there's nothing to be done about it. It's just like,
the more that I'm looking into pickups and stuff, and the more that I'm understanding how things work. Well, why does a P90 sound a certain way? Well, it's the width and the depth and the size of the magnet and the
kind of magnet
I always knew the kind of the magnet and all that kind of stuff, but it's got a lot to do with the actual like width and depth. Why does a gold foil sound the way it is? Because it's very flat, very skinny, very,
very
so
wide.
it's all the amount of winds is jammed into this one little section.
Well, I mean, if you pull apart those Jazzmasters, I mean, those pickups are very, very thin, but they're wide, and just the winds go like the polarity or whatever is it's a different pattern completely because of the size of the pickup. So
I learned a lot of that stuff by listening to Dylan from Dylan Talks Tone. Dude's amazing.
Yeah, no, he
makes really good pickups too. I got one of his P90s, and
that's the P90 that's in Sean's Junior.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
yeah. His
P90s
are nice. It's funny, like, so I've got a couple of guitars with P90s, nothing great until the one you built me. So I've got that behind you. I've got that Casino, which has got P90s in them, and they're a little microphonic, and it's a cheap, it's just a cheap Korean version of the guitar, so they're okay. But I've got that really nice P90 and that ES125 that you're working on. But like I'm having to get you, like Lola, the last guitar you built for me. I'm starting to figure it out. Finally, it's taken me a little bit because I'm so used to at this point. I mean, how many years ago did you make the Ether Master? 3?
2.5, 3, yeah,
maybe like 3.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like both of the other guitars you've built for me have the Lawlers in them, and I didn't realize that like those are pretty hot pickups.
Yeah,
are Telly pickups in general always a little hotter than like Telly bridge pickups?
Not usually. Usually a Telly pickup is
a little weak.
Yeah,
that was my perception. Those Lawlers are pretty. Those vintage tees. Or vintage T Lawlers.
So those aren't overwound either.
They're not overwound. They're just, but they've got like a bite to them. They're a little hotter. So like, I don't know if it's like when you like with I have more range on the volume with them than I do, and with the Strat than I do with those squeaky cleans. But if you just stick within like 10 to 8 range, man, those things like have a fucking mid-range that will just like cut through anything. It's really interesting. Like they're not as high output, but it's got a bark. So I'm getting used to it. Like it works really well with the band.
Yeah, no, that's funny because the first guitar I built with a P90 was the first thing I ever built. I'm like, I'm going to build a Les Paul Junior.
Yeah.
I want the simplest. I don't want to hide behind a bunch of knobs. I want one pickup guitar, and I'm going to put a good pickup in it. And I found the Dylan pickups through. I had ordered a pickup from another net guy. I'm not going to name his name. He screwed me over for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Never built my pickup. And I know it takes time, but come on, man. You're building me one pickup, and I only wanted to know like 4 months in, hey, what's going on? Do I have an ETA? And he cussed me out, and I was like, yeah, forget this. And Dylan answered, and hey, dude, I can build you a P90. I'm in Augusta, Georgia. I can have it to you in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was like, cool. So, but I was like, hey, I'm kind of worried because I'm a Les Paul guy, and I'm worried that it's going to be weak. And he literally laughed at me.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, well, what do you play? And I told him and blah, blah, blah. He goes, call me the day that you plug this thing into your 800 and tell me what you think. And I was like, oh, my God, dude.
Yeah.
It's the thing. So anyway, P90s are my favorite.
They were always my favorite pickup. In fact, those Strats, the made in Mexico Strats that I've got have both been replaced with, I forget who makes them. I'll think of it in a minute. But they're basically Strat wound P90s. Like, so they're not exactly P90s because it's not the same.
Right. We can't because of the
but it's as close
as
they can get them to fit in the Strat profile. And they don't sound like Strat pickups.
Porter, I think, made them.
Porter, yes.
Look at me.
Well, actually, I don't know that it was Porter. Porter did the electronics that are in there.
But Porter makes one. I know.
It may have been Porter. I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
But yeah, so, taking the inspiration from those and just using them, because I was like, when we were talking, we were like, obviously I make a T-style body because people dig them. I make a T-style guitar. My Futura that I make it's got several different things, and it's got a little,
it's not really an LP style
no,
guitar.
No, it's not. I said that in a way.
I mean, but it is. Like in practical terms, but it's got the cutaway and stuff in it, but it doesn't look like a Les Paul at all.
And some of that came from even the more 70s Japanese things. When you start getting into the 70s, they went from making all these weird, wacky, kooky guitars that you could buy and put your name on them, or, Normas and all these other things, to them just doing copies.
Yeah.
So, Greco is like you find a 70s Greco Les Paul, buy it, because they're freaking amazing. We had 4 or 5 of them come through that guitar shop I worked at.
That's that dude that was doing knockoffs? Is that the...
No.
What are the Grecos?
Greco is a Japanese-made guitar.
Oh, okay.
So you have Greco and you have Bernie, all right?
Oh, okay.
Greco originally was made in the Teisco factory. So we're talking about during the time when Teisco was making all the 60s wacky stuff.
Right.
They had one of the companies was Greco. Then it went on. Kawai bought Teisco.
67.
And 67, end of the 60s. And then they ended up moving, like there was a Matsumoku factory. Matsumoku was making Epiphone stuff. When they started making Epiphone, they were making Epiphone stuff. They also were making some of the Fender. That was the factory that was making the Japanese Fenders in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
So that Jazzmaster back there is probably...
But they were making, there was a company called Greco. There was a company called Bernie. And then there was a company called Fernandez. Now, we know Fernandez as their own thing. But Greco was their Gibson copies. And Fernandez was their Fender copies. So, dude, some of that stuff, some of those...
That's funny. I never put that together, the GMAF.
And then there's also Tokai.
Yeah.
Tokai made what they called the Love Rock. It looked just like Les Paul, but it said Love Rock. Now they're still making those, and they're pretty good guitars. But the 70s stuff, dude, Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
He didn't play a Gibson.
Right.
He played a Bernie.
That's funny.
Which is a Japanese copy.
Huh.
And you got to remember in the 70s.
Same profile though and everything.
Dude,
it's exactly the...
I've played some of that stuff, some of the Greco stuff and some of the Bernie stuff, where I would damn near give you 2 Gibsons for.
Oh, really?
Because especially 70s Gibsons.
It's older wood too at this point.
Because 70s Gibsons sucked.
True, right.
And the stuff coming out of those factories was way better.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why Gibson got so worried. That's the reason why Fender never really freaked out. But Gibson got worried because these dudes are about to show us up.
Yeah.
I mean, so... Yeah, so that kind of stuff. So I also, and Ibanez, Ibanez started as doing copies, they made Strats and their breezy sound. That's Tokai makes the breezy sound, excuse me. Breezy sound is a Strat, and then they made a tele copy, but Ibanez was kind of doing the same thing, and that's what they were all doing. All these companies were building those. And then you had acoustic wise, you had Takamine and I think it's Cortez.
Was Ovation Japanese?
No, I don't think so.
I had an Ovation for a hot minute and it was just hot garbage.
We used to get Ovations that were like falling apart and like hold them by the neck and bust them together like Garth Brooks used to do back in the day, because that's the only thing. Like, first thing is, if you are a fat dude like me, cannot play an Ovation. it just falls over, and there's nothing.
Weirdest design. Not a fan.
Yeah, not a fan at all. No, but no, there was some really cool stuff, especially guitars in the 70s that were way better than the stuff that was made here in the United States. So some of that even goes into almost like my Futura or whatever, There's just a really cool thing about those guitars. And what's funny is we always poo-pooed all of them, When I was a kid, some of the Hohner stuff, we were talking about Hohner stuff earlier.
Well, and some of that comes from the whole, this American superiority notion of Fender and Gibson are the, the ones to have.
Yeah.
Which is, clearly not always the case.
There's a guitar called Orville, which is, Orville Gibson, and they are Japanese made Gibsons.
Are they any good?
They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, listen, you find a 70s Matsumoku. In 70s Matsumoku, if it was made in the Matsumoku factory, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The pickups are good. The parts are good. It's built well. You know, some of that, the whole lawsuit thing was Ibanez stuff that was being Ibanez Les Pauls. I mean, they looked just like it. But then you can find what did they do once Gibson threatened to sue them? They made this goofy headstock or they did whatever. And they're still amazing guitars. And so, you know, punk rock days, Vantage guitars were made in the Matsumoku factory. They are your typical 70s looking guitars with slab bodies and neck through and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're amazing. Westone was a guitar in my shredder days.
I remember that one.
They were all made in that same factory. They made some of the coolest stuff. And, you know, Fender Japanese, that's the reason why Fender sent a company to Japan. Again, Gibson did it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I don't know what happened with the Orville stuff, but yeah, all of that stuff was really cool stuff.
Is it still that some of the off-brand stuff like that, Bernie's or whatever, are they still pretty affordable now? Or?
They're starting to get a little bit more because people are really realizing what they have. But I mean, you know, the Greco that we had, I remember this was 5-6 years ago at a shop, and it was a Les Paul. It was just basically a Les Paul standard, and it was a burst finish, and I think it was $550 or something like that.
Very affordable for
extremely
a guitar
affordable
these days. Yeah.
Now they're probably more,
yeah,
probably more like $975, $1,000.
Okay.
And also because they started, Tokai is reissuing the Love Rock, and Bernie is making some stuff in.
But you're not going to get
it's not
70s era Gibson for less than $3 or $4 now.
No.
Maybe $2,000 if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Yeah. And I mean, again, you know, there's a reason why 70s Fenders and 70s Gibsons, there's a reason why guys were buying 50 stuff in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's not because, it was so vintage, because it wasn't back then.
Right.
It's because the 70s stuff sucked.
Yeah.
It really did.
Necks rocking around and
just heavier than hell.
Yes.
You know, Gibson Les Pauls at the time were pancake bodies, and you've got, you know, a 1-inch piece of mahogany and a 1-inch piece, and then and all that's glued together, and the weight of the glue and the weight of all those extra things, it made for just a pig. Like those things are, and it's crazy because one of my favorite guitars ever is the Les Paul, like 70s Les Paul Custom and a silver burst finish.
Oh, dude! I mean, like the Fenders, like the Fender headstocks for the big headstock. You know,
right?
Those 70 Strats, those like those just honey, straight up wood body Strats are some of my favorites. I mean, they don't necessarily play great, probably, but the look of them.
No, they don't. They have a 3-bolt neck.
Yeah.
Which moves around like crazy. They had this crazy micro tilt thing that they thought was there. Oh, well, we have to shim all our necks. Let's make an adjustable shim. Well, that just, whatever.
Now, you can't get a late 60s big head Strat. So they did make the big head Strats in the late 60s.
They did. That was when CBS. So CBS did that.
I think up to 71, you're okay. And then after that, it starts getting a little.
But CBS did that. And they did that strictly because they wanted the name to be bigger.
More logo.
So how do we make the logo bigger? We'll just make the headstock bigger.
Yeah.
That's why on my guitars, the name is it's pretty big. Like, are you sure? Yeah, it fits. Like but yeah.
Well, so I mean that's it for us today, and you can reach Randy at kingelectricguitars.com, and you can reach me at jimmyether.com. If you want to contact us, leave a comment on YouTube here, or you can send us an email at fretfuldreams@headphonetreats.com.
Yeah, give us some show ideas. Give us some comments. Tell us we suck. Whatever. We can trust us. We got thick skin. We can handle it. Yeah, I know there's going to be somebody that says every single thing I just said was wrong.
It probably was.
That's cool. Get your own podcast.
Go get your own podcast.
It's not that hard.
No, it's not. Well, cool. And, of course, we're all on social media and stuff too. I'll tell you, like, you should get on this. I'm pretty active on Threads these days, which is like the new Twitter from Facebook.
Okay.
And it's pretty badass.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
For the moment. I'm not pretending for a moment that I think it's going to last, but yeah, I've got like
once all the old people get on it, it's going to be destroyed.
I'm not so much worried about that as I am. So the deal with it is, it's kind of like Twitter was in like 2008, 2009, but with TikTok's algorithm. So it's like your For You page gets like crazy specific into what you like, but there's this community vibe that's more like the old Twitter.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool. Like it.
So I can expect more overweight dudes in diapers, is what you're saying.
Maybe. If that's what you're into. That's what that's the problem is it's what you're into, Randy. That's what you get.
I don't know why they keep sending me all this.
Your TikTok is overweight men in diapers because that's what you like.
I don't know why they keep sending me all these dudes. Anyway, yeah. So, right. So, yeah, I'm on all those things. I'm on everything but X. Send us some info. Send us some questions. Send us some comments, some feedback, some money.
Yeah, send us money. Forget everything else. Just send us money.
Send us chocolate-covered cherries.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the dark chocolate ones because they're more healthy for you. Yeah. By the way, soon we're going to have a whole episode on Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Are we? I guess next episode we're going to have that one then.
If I have my way, we will. Yes.
It won't be posted around Christmas, but that's okay, right?
I mean, I guess.
Do you want to wait until Christmas to do that?
I don't know. We should wait.
We should wait until next year.
Yeah, we should talk about Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas because it's the reason why I play guitar in the first place.
You did mention it in one of the last episodes.
Have I?
But you didn't go deep into it. You did talk about it.
We should do some kind of drawing. If somebody can answer Emmett Otter's question, they get a shirt. Are we going to make shirts? Are we going to do something?
I'm sure at some point we'll make shirts because my buddy Tony has made a logo that just absolutely kicks ass.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think it'd make a really cool shirt too. Yeah. So yeah, we should do that. We should make a question of the week. And my question's only going to be about Emmett Otters. All my questions are about Emmett Otters.
All right.
All right. Well, good talking with you guys.
Talk soon.
See ya.
Fretful Dreams is part of the Headphone Treats podcasting network.